just the way ChatGPT, DeepSeek, then MCP changed the equation around using AI, OpenClaw also shook the market. But as excited as we are with it, the real challenge is where and how do we actually run it? Running it, of course, you can run it locally, but you need decent hardware. It gives you full support, but you still have to deal with managing it. Of course, you can go to cloud, but then you lose all control and then you also expose sensitive data. Then there is self-hosting. It sounds great, but it brings best and worst of both worlds. You still have to manage it yourself. You still have to deal with all that complexity. That's exactly what Amazee is trying to solve. They have built amazee.claw, a managed OpenClaw hosting designed for teams that need production-grade security, regional control, and fast path from sign up to getting access to live agent. And today we have with us Michael Schmid, CEO and founder of Amazee, to talk about that. Michael, it's great to have you on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you.
First of all, let's talk about Amazee, because we talked a couple of years ago. Now we are talking about, of course, OpenClaw. So talk about Amazee, how you folks have evolved to stay with your customers wherever they are in their journey.
Yeah, a lot have happened. Basically, since the ChatGPT moment and the fact of open source models, we saw really an opening of being able to run AI in a data protected and data sovereign way, right? What we also talked about in the past, everything that we do, that Amazee comes from, with our history of Switzerland, we today have customers in 20 different countries. What we're really seeing in the world is how these companies have more and more requirements around data protection and data sovereignty. And when we saw all these AI stuff happening, right, the big companies, they don't really care so much about data protection. And talking to my customers, they have a lot of fears and concerns of, I want to use these capabilities, right? Everybody's excited about the opportunities of AI, but how can I use them in a safe way? And as Amazee, data protection, data sovereignty has always been at the forefront. So we have spent the last years and months really spending a lot of time understanding how can we provide access to our customers to these new possibilities and opportunities of AI without them losing control over where their data goes, how it is managed, how it is controlled, and all that. And that's what we're doing. And one of that service is amazee.claw.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, of course, almost everybody knows what OpenClaw is and all, but also talk about some of the use cases that OpenClaw specifically handles better. That's where, a lot of folks are looking at it before we talk about where and how to run it actually.
Yeah. So for me, it was really the experience when I used it this first time myself is that it felt a lot more like a real assistant. For anybody that ever used ChatGPT, right, you have a chat, you go in, you ask it something, and then basically after that, you maybe leave or you just ask the next question. But there is not this, it doesn't seem to learn really about what are you doing, who it is. And OpenClaw is completely built different. So the whole idea of these agents like OpenClaw is that they continuously self-improve and learn. And technically how this actually works is that it just stores text data in the background while it learns about you. So if you start with OpenClaw, it actually asks you, who are you? Who do I? What's my name? What are we going to do together? And based on all of that, it continuously learns and improves. Where, like, let's say, if you ask it every day about one specific topic, the next day it might actually suggest you. It will solve the problems automatically for you because you've asked it the last 3 times. And that's really, when I saw this the very first time, that was the massive change where it's instead of just like a ChatGPT window when I want to ask a question, it's becoming this agent that understands who am I, what are my problems, how can I solve them. And that's really opened up for me, myself, this like, opportunity of like, hey, this could actually really solve problems in a business, right? Giving everybody their own private assistant, which can read their emails, which can help organize calendar events and all that stuff, but also having agents that sit in a company that help a whole group of people, a whole team, to solve very time-intensive or repetitive tasks can be now fully automated. So that's what I really saw in OpenClaw, and I think if you hear what other people are using it, that's really the big difference. It goes away from just an one-time question AI to an assistant that continuously learns and improves.
Then what is the difference between OpenClaw and MCP? Because with MCP, you can do the same thing. You can set up the whole memory, and when you start a chat, you tell it this is the prompt you should read first. It knows everything about it. You can build memories over time, so you'll know, oh, since January, you have been creating this whole series. You're on the third episode. So what is the actual difference?
I think for me, the big difference is that OpenClaw allows you to actually use it where you're already communicating, right? So it has integrations into Telegram, WhatsApp, Slack, Signal, iMessage. I don't know, there's like probably 50 other channels. And that's really the shift of where in the past, if I wanted to talk to my AI, I had to open a specific app to talk to it. Like I open ChatGPT or Claude app on my phone. And now with OpenClaw, I can talk to where I'm already talking to my friends, right? I have now some OpenClaws in my own family Telegram channels where we're organizing events or like we're trying to meet together, and there's an agent or an assistant sitting in there that helps us doing these things. And I think that's the first massive difference, that instead of going to the AI now comes to you. And for us as a company, as Amazee, we live and breathe inside Slack. Right, and the fact that I can just ping a Slack bot or an agent in the chat where we're already talking, and it can read the history and it can help us solve problems right away without going somewhere else, that's the massive difference. And the other one, obviously, I believe, is the fact that it's open source. The fact that anybody can take that, modify it, change it to whatever they want, and also the fact that you can connect any models, right? It's not just Claude. If you download the Claude app, you can only use the Claude models. If you use ChatGPT, you can only use the ChatGPT models. But the fact that OpenClaw is open source, anybody can add or remove their models and connect to the models that they really want to use. So like you mentioned, you can run it locally, you can run it in the cloud, you can whatever. And so this freedom, this capability to connect it to anything, I think that's the other big new thing where we see, like, if we compare it to other things like just pure MCP.
These days, especially in Europe, we are talking a lot about cloud sovereignty. We are talking about AI sovereignty. We are talking data sovereignty. Of course, a lot of regulations are coming. They're regulated industries. So I don't want to throw too many questions. We will break them down one by one. But let's start with the enterprise use case of OpenClaw, and then we'll talk about what Amazee is doing. I just want to build the whole why OpenClaw.
No, 100%. No, I very appreciate that. I really see two main use cases in the enterprises, and that's what I see within Amazee ourselves. The first one is to give every individual employee their own personal assistant, where they can use, like I mentioned before, to answer emails, to do calendar, but just to remind them of things. Like my envisioning is, for example, that for every meeting that you have, specifically in a remote, right, there's a transcriptions that happens. And while I'm committing, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to do this until tomorrow, that my assistant, my own personal OpenClaw, reads the transcript after the meeting and immediately creates a to-do list for me and reminds me maybe an hour before and saying, hey, you need to do this. Or if I need to have a meeting with, let's say, with my boss, instead of me going to the calendar of the boss and trying to figure out, I just go to my assistant and tell it, hey, can you find me a meeting? Or it maybe comes up by itself, right? It understands, it has all this knowledge about me. But that assistant most probably will only be used by each individual employee, right? This is not shared. This is for them to improve to the busy lives that we all have in the world today. And then the second use case is really these agents that are shared between teams. And that's where inside Amazee, we have at least right now 10 different OpenClaws that are doing all kind of work. And most of them today are doing things like giving us access to data that otherwise I would need to go to a website. So one use case, for example, is we use a CRM, we use HubSpot internally. And if I want to know, right, which deals have moved in the last week, I can go to a dashboard and I can see it. But I can also just talk to we call it the HubSpot claw. So I can go to the HubSpot claw and ask it, hey, which deals have moved last week? Is there anything special about them? And that's just another way to access data than I would done in the past. But what is really nice is that because OpenClaw continuously learns, right? For example, we have a case where our billing system, there is now, we call it Dave. That's what our billing team system is called. And so we have a Dave claw that I can go and say, hey, I have a QBR coming up with this customer. Can you tell me everything that happened in the last 6 months with that customer? Right? And it will tell me how much their usage changed, how many deployments they had, and stuff like that. Now, again, that data I could access myself through a dashboard or even through an API, but it just makes it a lot more complex, or it takes a lot more time. And the fact that other people can see this, right, and you can steer the OpenClaw into a specific direction and sell it. Yeah, like if I ask you for a QBR, can you also focus on, like, were there any changes on the customer side, right? I can actually go to the LinkedIn of the customer and see what has changed, what have they published in the world. And so all this learning from one employee, now the others can also use. So if the next employee asks for a QBR, the OpenClaw by itself will go and look for the company information online as well. And so that's really like we're working together on improving these agents that help the whole company. And that's really the two major use cases that I really see that we're using inside Amazee. There's obviously a lot more, but these two I can definitely say they have already improved our lives quite drastically over the last weeks and months.
Thank you so much. Now let's talk about what is the friction, what is the challenges, what are the hurdles people face when they do want to use OpenClaw. They get excited about the autonomous capabilities that it offers, that you can run a lot of things in the background. You don't even have to sit down and watch them. But what are the friction areas? What are the hurdles which discourage people from using? Of course, security is one big, but let's talk about the installing, managing side first.
The installing itself is actually pretty simple. Right? There are multiple install scripts that you can just basically on a Windows, Mac, Linux, whatever, you can install it. I think the big problem and risk is that I believe, and many other people agree, that you should actually not run them locally on your computer or even in your network in your home. And the reason for that is that operating systems by default, they don't really have very good sandboxing capabilities, right? If you install something on your Mac or PC or Linux, and OpenClaw actually will do this, it will automatically look for cookies. It will find your LinkedIn cookie. It will find your X cookie. It will find all the different things on your computer that are there, and it will happily use them, right? It sounds great that I can just ask my OpenClaw to saying, can you write a new tweet? And then it will figure it out how to do this. The problem is there's obviously a lot of data on your local computer, and now suddenly an OpenClaw that has a bit of its own mind, and for anybody that has used some of these agents for an extended point of time, they sometimes make mistakes, right? They're not completely flawless. And having an OpenClaw that has access to all your personal data, to all your cookies, to all your data by default, I think is a big problem. We have seen already some security issues around that. And so that's the first thing. The installing is easy, but then really securing it is quite complex. Specifically on a local computer, on your personal computer, it's almost impossible. There are now the first tools that are coming out that are trying to solve that. And even if you install it on a Mac Mini and you give it access to your network, there's still a lot in your network that can be seen, right? Usually a local network of somebody's home is like a safe environment. So there's file sharing going on. You can discover a lot of devices, like there's cameras, there's maybe your router that can automatically be configured. And again, putting an OpenClaw in there without proper VLANs and DMZs and all that stuff, that is, again, quite complex to build. is a security problem. So that's why we decided, we're going to run it in the cloud, meaning it does not have access to your local environment unless you give it specifically. Plus, we're also running it inside a container, meaning it does not by default have access to any credentials, except you specifically decide, I will give you this credential. So you can give it your X cookie or your LinkedIn password and things like that, but it's always a conscious decision by the owner of that claw to saying, okay, I will give you that access. And he cannot by default find all these things and try to use them in either good or bad ways. The next bigger thing is the updates. And OpenClaw as one of the most, or it is right now the most GitHub stored repository. It's one of the fastest growing. Currently, it has more than 5,000 pull requests that are currently open. And so they do releases every single day. And if you do releases every single day, things will break. It's an open source tool. And I have my own experience where you just update the OpenClaw one day and it just doesn't behave as it did yesterday. And you're wondering, did now the LLM change? Did something change there? Did something change in OpenClaw? And there were cases where they just disabled a feature by default that you now have to enable again. And that's extremely frustrating for people, obviously, because you want to use it. You want to use it as an agent. You want to teach it once, and you don't want every day to read release notes and stuff like that. And so that's what we're solving is every time that there's a new release note, we're looking through these, we are evaluating if there's a possibility. And before we update all the customers' OpenClaws, we update some internal ones that we use at least for a couple of hours ourselves to say, are they as good? And if there is an update that we feel like it's actually a regression, we will not push this update out to our customers. So we're actually going back to the OpenClaw maintainers and we're checking, do other people have this problem as well? And maybe even contribute. So we've contributed back to OpenClaw to fix some of the issues. And so basically that's the autopilot thing that we're providing is we're making sure that the customers don't have to worry about this, it suddenly becomes worse or it forgets stuff. We're handling that and we're only pushing updates that we can also stand behind and can say they actually work or they have become better.
Once again, excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah, so the debate between running it locally versus running it on the cloud, that's kind of you already addressed it. Now, if I do want to run it on cloud, should I self-host it and deal with think about running any other WordPress or Drupal or whatever it is, you have to deal with, you do get the benefit of not having to deal it locally, but still have to deal with other complexity which comes with managing it, because deploying is easy, running it is complicated. So let's talk about the managed hosting part. What gave you the idea to build, once again, managed OpenClaw, amazeeClaw, and what market are you looking at?
Yeah, so the reason it really comes from our own usage, right? When I've used it myself, I deployed it once into a container. We have a containerized hosting solution, so that's kind of daily bread and butter for us is to bring new applications into containers. But then I really saw the opportunity. I started to talk to some of my team members, and the first question of them was can I have my own? And I was okay, yes, let me do this again. And so just over time, we've built all the tools that you see when you sign up for amazeeClaw, all that we've built to ourselves be able to deploy new OpenClaws really fast. So we really solved our own problems. And along the way, we realized, hey, other people out in the world, they don't have the capability to start to build a system with us right now. If you click the button to provision until it's actually there, it takes maybe 20 to 25 seconds. And that involves spinning up containers, securing the system, generating AI keys, injecting them, provisioning storage, provisioning backups. There's just all these things that needs to happen. And to do that within 25 seconds is usually not possible for a random person. Yes, they can do it, right? And specifically now with AI, you will totally be able to deploy your OpenClaw on a VPS. But I've seen people doing it. It takes them 20, 30 minutes, which is fine. But now, let's say you want to do 10 of them. Right? We already in Amazee, we have 10. We have at least another 10 ideas for more OpenClaws to spend the same amount of time. And then for the upgrading and all of that, that's going to be extremely complex and just a waste of time, to be very honest. And so that's what we automated. That's where all our experience comes in, from all the hosting on how we do this efficient, how we do this fast. And that's one of the other thing that we just see, like, why should you spend time on doing all of this if you can just go to a place that makes it for you super simple to use, and honestly, maybe even cheaper, right? Because renting a whole VPS that costs, I'd say $40-50 per month, and you run 1 or 2 OpenClaws, you're going to spend more money on the VPS than what you would use on our infrastructure, because the actual cost for running an OpenClaw for us right now is $15 per OpenClaw per month. And you're going to find a hard time to find a VPS that costs less and also you use less time to manage it, to update it, to secure it. And with us, you just get this out of the box and you can use it.
Let's talk about privacy, security, and data residency, because in this environment we talked about the whole data sovereignty as well. How does amazeeClaw manage that?
So like mentioned, that's one of our deep roots of Amazee, is to be able to allow the customer to choose where the data is not only stored but also processed. So when you set up an amazeeClaw, the first thing we ask you is actually in which region you would like to host this. And right now, we can offer the US, Europe, and Australia. That's because most of our customers are in these regions. That is not limited to that at all. Like, we can also, we're talking with Latin America, we're talking for Japan. We even have customers asking about Africa, South Africa, and other states and other countries in the African continent. And basically, what we guarantee you is that if you select the EU, that everything around this OpenClaw happens inside the EU, in a data center that is physically located in the EU. If you're interested to know even more, we have data protection agreements and things like that, so we can give you even more insights to which exact infrastructure provider that is used and how, but that's more like from an enterprise agreement point of view. But basically, we can guarantee you that your OpenClaw is running in Europe, but also the LLM itself is running in Europe. And that's a service that if you try to get this from of the big AI providers, you're actually going to have to buy an enterprise agreement that going to cost you at least $100,000 a year to be able to define the data residency. And I never really understood, why do I have to pay so much money just to be able to choose in which country it is running? Yes, it's a little bit more expensive to run things only in Europe, but I can tell you from experience, it doesn't have to be $100,000, right? It's like this single sign-on tax that we talk about. Just to do single sign-on, you pay a lot more. There's also this data residency tax where companies just charge you a hell lot of more just to choose the region that something should be running. And I don't believe that's a good thing. That's not helpful at all, because all the laws of how the world is today is that every country and every country is writing more laws that things can only run in their regions. And so, we want to offer solutions for customers to sleep well, to know that, right, if I choose EU, it's only happening in EU. If I choose Australia, I can guarantee that it's only running in that. And that's really something we have done from an Amazee.io point of view. And that's what we're now also building from an Amazee AI with an affordable way, to not, needing to buy an enterprise agreement for $100,000 that I just can just select this specific country or so.
Now let's talk about organizations, customers, teams who are already in the cloud. They're already running Kubernetes or containerized infrastructure. How does amazeeClaw fit into their existing stack? Is there migration? Is there some additional work, or just another tool that you can add to the toolbox?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So everything we do at Amazee is completely open source. So technically, you can see the containers that we're using to run our OpenClaw inside Kubernetes. So if anybody is interested to build something like this themselves, they can totally use these images and see all the different things we've built inside of it to make sure that it runs secure, it runs fast, because there are some things that you're going to need to build. Then obviously, Amazee, we have a container deployment system called Lagoon, which is basically the system that can deploy applications across multiple Kubernetes clusters all over the world. Like as Amazee, we're running 100 plus Kubernetes clusters all over the world for different customers with different requirements. And Lagoon is basically the system that knows when do I need to deploy to which cluster. And we've taught basically Lagoon how to deploy an OpenClaw into Kubernetes clusters. But in the end, Lagoon just sits on top of Kubernetes. You install this in all different Kubernetes clusters. So if somebody is really interested to find not only a way of deploying it to one Kubernetes cluster, for that you probably don't need Lagoon yet. Helm and all these things are perfectly fine. But as soon as you want to deploy it to a fleet of Kubernetes clusters, you want to orchestrate them, then really Lagoon comes in. And again, this is completely open source. So you can run it yourself. We know of people that use Lagoon themselves. And the really cool thing is, right, they just now pointed to the OpenClaw Lagoon repository, and now they can deploy all of that by themselves in there. So that's where we see the world is going, right? That all these things are going to get containerized anyway. Like every other application today is getting containerized, and the same is going to happen also in these agents. And we are open sourcing all the things around it so people can use it. And of course, we're also offering services around this. So if people are interested in leveraging or installing this, but they need some support, we're also offering that.
Since it's managed, what about multi-tenancy? What about isolation at a scale? Because let's say there's one customer's whose agent workload is spike, very heavy user, other is not. You also want to, of course, you talked about privacy and all those things. So how do you handle that part?
Yeah. So the important thing we need to understand is that the OpenClaw itself, so the JavaScript code, it's built in JavaScript and TypeScript, that actually runs the harness, so the AI part that talks to the LLM, is separate from the LLM itself. So the OpenClaw just talks to an LLM endpoint where the LLM is running and doing its thing. If you come to amazeeClaw, you get both out of the box, right? So you get your OpenClaw running, and we also have an LLM gateway that allows you access to all kind of different models, right? So we have access to Claude, GPT, Gemini, so that's the big three, but we also have open source models that we provide through our AI gateway. However, by the way, we're not restricting this. If you want to bring your own Claude subscription, or if you want to use OpenRouter or whatever, you can use it with amazeeClaw. It's totally possible. We're not restricting anything at all there. And so that's really what we're doing in terms of making sure that it's super simple for customers to use, that they don't have to worry about any of these things. And now in terms of spiking, the really spike that we see is more on the LLM side. Right, that's the heavy usage. So, and that usually doesn't run in your Kubernetes cluster, at least in the cases. There are now with VLLM and LLMD, there are capabilities to run the models in the same Kubernetes cluster that also the OpenClaw is running. However, in the most systems that I've seen right now, they are separated. And OpenClaw itself is not spiky by itself that much. And if it is, it's still running on Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes has capability of auto-scaling, of capabilities of adding additional resources like CPU memory if a pod needs it. And that's what we're all leveraging. So this way, we can create a system where each tenant or each OpenClaw is completely separate from each other, right? They cannot talk to each other. They cannot steal each other's resources. And that's how we handle this. So we've done obviously performance testing and also penetration testing to make sure that none of these concerns of noisy neighbors can happen. And so far, we were able to prove that all of this is all good. Plus, we're actually going through security certification. So we're doing ISO and SOC 2 Type 2 certifications on all of this as well. And that's required anyway. So we have to prove that these things are perfectly multi-tenant separated and cannot hurt each other.
And how can folk get started? Can they try it first, or they just, what is the process to try it?
Yes. So I really, for my own, right, I've only believed what it's possible after I saw it happening. And so we said we want to give everybody the capability to try this out completely for free. So if you go to amazee.ai, there is a link to the amazee.claw. And if you sign up, you get basically a full 2 week for free with $10 of AI credits also for free. So you can really test it out. There's no commitment at all. You don't have to pay anything, and you can use it for $10 for as much as you want to use within of $10 tokens. And that should able for anybody to just play with it, to see what it does, right? All you have to do is say hello, and it will basically saying, hey, I'm OpenClaw. What should we do together? And my experience is really that, like, tell it who you are, what you're doing, and tell you what maybe is one of the tasks that you really dread every single week that you have to do. And I'm pretty sure OpenClaw will come back to you and come with a suggestion of how you could automate that. And within the $10 of AI tokens, you might be able to already create value and make your life easier. And that's why we said, hey, we want to do this completely for free. So yes, go to amazee.ai, sign up, you will get it for free, and you can try it out and see if it will make your life better. And I truly believe it probably will.
Excellent, thank you. Can you also talk about how much control users get? By control, I just don't mean access to the system, but what about costs? Because if you work in the background, you have no clue what's going on. It may just keep piling up your bill. I mean, of course, Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, they will be happy. You won't be.
Yeah, and actually I have a good story there. So when I really first tried, I told my Claw, I was like, hey, can you analyze this system for me? Like, I wanted to do some like financial modeling of my own company. And it went off and it said, yeah, I will come back in the morning. And it worked all night. So literally, like, it just continues, made LLM requests. And I woke up in the morning. The result was great. However, I also got a $400 bill of just one night. And I've heard of other people having the exact same experience because, right, this OpenClaw, it can literally call itself. Like, it can start itself. You can create cron jobs, which is awesome, but you also need to be aware that this can cost you. So one of the things we build inside amazee.claw is you can actually define a budget, and it will not use more than that. So let's say if you define a budget of $100 for a month, if you are at $100, it will stop the bot from continue using LLM calls. And so you have controls over how much money it spends, so that you don't wake up one morning and suddenly like you're going to spend 4 times what you expected. And so that's an important thing that we've added for version 1 already. It's in there, so that we give people the capability to try these things out without going bankrupt.
Can you also talk about what else is in your pipeline that you folks are working on? Just tease us, don't disclose too much if you're not ready.
So one of the cool things is agent-to-agent communication, right? We're talking about one OpenClaw talking to you or a team. What I'm really imagining is that the real power is if they can talk to each other. So imagine you have a finance claw and an accounting claw, and they need to talk to each other to figure out something. Instead of copy-pasting data between them, why don't they just talk to each other? That's not a simple problem from a security point of view, so that's one of the things we're looking at. Then we have customers that want to have an email address, for example. They ask some of their claws to build dashboards and to have we're a web hosting company, or like we can host containers. So we could also do some of these things that by default you get an automated hosting environment as well, where you can host your dashboards or any of these things. And then obviously OpenClaw is not the only one of these harnesses. So there are almost every day new ones are coming out. So we're actively monitoring if some of these have more capabilities. So far, we've always seen new ideas getting also ported back into OpenClaw, so there was no need. But as we know from history, like Kubernetes, for example, was not clear in the beginning that it is going to be the winner and everybody uses that. So we will continuously monitor and research other tools. And if we realize that some of these systems might be used better for a specific use case, we're definitely also going to implement them and allow customers to use them. So it's really like an early day. Like if you play with it, if you try it, reach out. and tell us if something is missing. This is really the early days. It's all open source. We had customers already that sent us pull requests for some of the improvements. So let's build this together and make a life that we've always been dreaming of. One of the fun things is I actually ask people how they call their claw. There's a lot of Jarvises in there. So I think people really want this Iron Man Jarvis thing, and maybe we can build this, right? That there's just a support or an agent that is always there that can answer your questions and help you with your life. And I really think we have never been as close as we are. And for that, we need feedback. So give us feedback, give us the things that you would like to do, and we're happy to implement it and build it together.
Michael, thank you so much for joining us and walking us through what it takes to make Agentic AI production ready, how to get the best of both worlds, run things in the cloud, but also have as much control as you want without having to deal with all the maintenance hurdle that comes with it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to chat with you folks again, because you folks are doing a lot of work in this space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to keep you up to date, and I really encourage anybody, like, it's a free trial. Go and try and use it. It really will cost you nothing. Give it a try. It's crazy what you can do. And I'm happy to be talking today. Thank you.